Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something really pressing for mission-driven organizations across Canada: recession preparedness and strategy for Canadian charities. Look, if you're after a shortcut to getting up to speed on this, critical planning, you're definitely in the right place. The situation Canadian charities face during a downturn, it's unique and, frankly, incredibly tough. We're calling it the double challenge. It's not just about tightening your belt. The thing is, your revenue donations, corporate support, it often drops just when the need for your services like food banks, mental health support, housing aid, well, it spikes violently. It's this ultimate pinch point, right? It forces some really hard decisions.
And that's precisely why we need this deep dive today. Our mission, clarity. We're pulling out five proven strategies directly from the source material. They focus on building financial strength now before things get really rocky. We're talking resilience, making sure compliance is tight, and optimizing how you connect with your donors when the economic skies look gray.
Okay, let's start with a bit of history. Because how downturns hit the sector, well, it changes. Canada's charities have weathered big recessions before, and each one felt different. If you think back to the 1990s, that whole era was marked by deep government cuts, less private support, pretty much across the board. It was a widespread tightening.
Right. Then fast forward to, say, 2008, 2009, the global financial crisis. What's interesting there is, while lots of assets took a hit, the immediate pain point, individual donations, total giving dropped quite a bit, and those smaller everyday gifts, they were often the first to dry up. Foundations held up a bit better, but you definitely felt the ripples.
But then, 2020 hits, the COVID-19 recession. And the data, well, it surprised almost everyone. Despite that initial shock, charitable giving actually went up overall. Why?
Well, a big part was the sector rapidly adopting, pretty sophisticated digital fundraising tools. They allowed for instant connection with donors who felt newly motivated. It was a huge lesson in being adaptable.
Okay, so using those past experiences, what should charities brace for now?
Expect demand for key services, things like housing help, mental health programs, job training. Expect that to absolutely surge. Meanwhile, donations tied directly to, say, individual income or corporate profits, likely to decline. And on top of that, operating costs, everything from keeping the lights on to staff salaries might climb because of inflation. Staffing gets tough too. Hiring freezes, maybe reduced hours.
That sounds pretty daunting. But the sources also mention some actual silver linings, structural things that offer a bit more stability than, say, 20 years ago.
Absolutely. There are some buffers now. First big one, foundations. Their combined assets are at record highs. We're talking over $1.6 trillion. And crucially, they have to give away a certain percentage each year. It's called the disbursement quota. Doesn't matter what the market's doing. That required giving. It provides a massive, reliable annual floor of funding for the sector.
Wow, okay. That mandated payout really changes the game for reliable funding. And it's not just the traditional foundations, right? Donor-advised funds, DFs, they're a big deal now, too.
A very big deal. The sources pointed out DF assets hit over $250 million by 2023, and they consistently grant out, upwards of 20% of their holdings every year. They move money quickly.
And thinking longer term.
We also have to keep the long game in view. We are right on the edge of the biggest generational wealth transfer ever as boomers pass assets down. So proving your stability now through this kind of planning positions your organization to capture some of that future legacy giving.
Right, makes sense. And the final point from 2020, government help.
Yeah, don't forget that. When recessions hit hard and fast, governments often step in with emergency programs. Think about the wage subsidies in 2020 that kept so many charities afloat. Being prepared means knowing how to tap into those lifelines fast if they become available.
Okay, let's shift gears to the operational side. Strategy number one, know your numbers. Get that financial visibility. You absolutely have to start with a really rigorous financial health check, using those three key statements: position, operations, cash flow, to see exactly where you stand.
Right, and this is where we go beyond just looking at the bottom line. We need to look at the metrics that really signal vulnerability, the protective stuff.
Okay, tell us about those red flags. Like, why is the current ratio so critical? What does it tell us?
The current ratio is pretty simple. Current assets divided by current liabilities. If that number dips below 1.0, it literally means you don't have enough liquid cash right now to cover your immediate bills. It absolutely has to stay above 1.0. But maybe the most critical metric for recession planning, that's the operating reserve ratio.
Okay, what's that?
That tells you how many months you could keep operating if, theoretically, all new funding just stopped tomorrow. If you have less than 3 months of operating cash saved up, that's red alert territory. Needs immediate attention.
And efficiency. I saw that benchmark for fundraising efficiency, spending less than 25 cents to raise a dollar. Is that realistic for everyone, small charities too?
Look, it's the standard to aim for, and aiming for it forces good discipline. If your ratio is higher, maybe you spend 50 cents to raise a dollar. Well, it doesn't automatically mean you're failing, but it does mean you're less resilient if revenue drops, right? Because half your new money is eaten up by costs right away. And the other big red flag here, relying on one single source for, say, more than 50% of your total revenue, diversification isn't just nice to have, it's essential protection.
Yeah, that reliance on one source really underscores why planning is so important. You can't just react month by month. The sources really push for building a 3 to 5 year strategic plan that actually models out 3 different financial scenarios. I thought that was really practical.
It's vital prep work. You need your best case, let's say, projecting 10% revenue growth, then a realistic case, maybe modest 2-3% growth, and most importantly, a worst case. And this one has to be painful. Assume something like a 15% revenue decline. By planning for that worst case now, you map out the tough calls in advance, rather than scrambling in a crisis. The sources really emphasize that long-term goal. Try to ensure no single funding source makes up more than, say, 40% of your budget over that 5-year window.
Okay, so if strategy 1 is about shoring up the finances, strategy 2 feels like it's about protecting the engine arm, the people. Let's talk donors. Your existing donors. They're your absolute most valuable asset, aren't they? Because keeping them costs so much less than finding new ones.
The data on retention is pretty striking, especially about thanking people quickly. The sources noted donors who get a thank you within just 48 hours, they're 4 times more likely to give again.
More times, wow.
Yeah, it's an immediate return on investment just for prioritizing that acknowledgement. Speed matters.
That's incredible. It really proves that how fast you respond can matter more than the actual method. Which brings us to monthly donor sustainers. They must be like gold during volatile times.
They're your anchor. They provide that crucial, predictable income when everything else is up and down. And often it's just about asking, right? Someone giving $120 a year, ask them if they'd switch to a, very manageable $10 a month.
Right, which leads right into strategy number 3. Don't stop fundraising, optimize it. Okay, this feels a bit counterintuitive.
It does, but it's necessary.
Hang on, I have to push back a bit here. If we're looking at a potential 15% revenue drop in our worst-case scenario, and maybe planning for 25% spending cuts, wouldn't cutting fundraising costs seem like, smart management, an easy operational save?
It seems logical short-term, I get it. But historically, it's proven to be pretty disastrous long-term. We saw this clearly after 2008. Many Canadian charities that slashed their fundraising budgets deeply. They either took years to get their donor base back, or honestly, some never fully recovered. When a crisis hits, people often want to help. But if you stop asking, if you just disappear, they might assume you don't need the help anymore. You have to stay visible and, yes, optimize your efforts.
Okay, optimize. And timing is key there.
Yeah.
We know December is huge for giving in Canada. When should that planning really kick off for the year-end push?
You need a good 5-month runway, so September. That's when you should start planning seriously. Looking at your donor segments, trying to lock in any potential matching gifts from major donors, getting those early commitments to build momentum before that final December sprint.
Okay, shifting within the people focus now to staffing. This is tough because staff costs are often, 60–80% of a charity's budget?
Usually, yeah. And dealing with potential staff reductions is probably the hardest part of recession planning.
So what's the advice there?
It is tough. The sources really stress mapping out non-layoff options before you think you need them. Avoid those emotional, reactive decisions. So that means thinking about a hiring freeze, maybe cross-training staff so they can cover essential roles if needed, potentially reducing work hours across the board, and even considering temporary salary cuts, maybe starting with the leadership team first. These steps help protect your frontline capacity for longer.
And the board's role must get magnified during all this uncertainty.
Yeah.
They need to step up beyond just governance, right?
Absolutely. They shift gears, schedule monthly board meetings, not quarterly, keep a really close eye on cash flow, be ready to approve contingency plans quickly. And importantly, board members need to leverage their networks, actively help with fundraising, maybe secure some in-kind donations, get involved.
Got it. Okay, final stretch. Strategy 4 and 5. Operational resilience and those legal guardrails. For operational efficiency, strategy 4, it sounds like you have to take a hard look at programs. Figure out what really delivers the most impact, and maybe stop doing what doesn't.
Precisely. It's about focus.
And this review needs to translate into actual budget scenarios, right? Not just for revenue drops, but for potential spending cuts. Like, you need to know ahead of time. What does a 10% cut look like? What about 25%? Even a really tough 50% cut to overhead and programs. Who gets affected? How does it impact the mission?
Yes, having those scenarios ready is crucial. And that brings us neatly to the legal guardrails, strategy 5. We absolutely have to talk compliance. Missing these steps can be fatal, like literally losing your charitable status.
Okay, what are the absolute non-negotiables here?
First, basic internal controls. Segregation of duties is just fundamental. No single person should handle everything from receiving money to signing checks. You also need 2 signatures on checks over a certain amount. Often it's around $1,000. But set your policy, and please do an annual review of your insurance policies, especially directors and officers' liability. That's non-negotiable protection for your board.
Makes sense. And on the Canada Revenue Agency, the CRA side, what are the key compliance things charities sometimes let slip when they're just focused on survival?
The most immediate deadline is filing your T3010 return. That has to be done on time, within 6 months of your fiscal year end. Missing that deadline, that puts your status at risk right away. Second, you have to monitor your disbursement quota. Remember that rule. Spending 3.5% of your average investment assets from the last 24 months on actual charitable activities.
Right, you mentioned that for foundations. Why is monitoring your own DQ so vital during a downturn?
Well, for charities with endowments, it's the same principle. That requirement forces money out the door for charitable work, even when investment values might be shaky. It prevents organizations from just hoarding cash during tough times, ensuring funds keep flowing to where they're needed. And one last crucial point. If you absolutely must reduce staff, talk to an employment lawyer first. Seriously. Provincial rules on notice and severance vary, and getting it wrong can lead to really costly legal battles later.
Okay, that message of early action, being proactive, really comes through across all these strategies. So to kind of wrap up this deep dive, resilience really comes from preparation, doesn't it? Knowing your numbers inside out through good benchmarking, really prioritizing and optimizing those relationships with your existing donors, and just maintaining super rigorous compliance with the CRA and provincial rules. You can't wait for the storm to hit to start building the ark, basically.
Exactly. And maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Given the inherent stability we talked about in foundation giving and that huge generational wealth transfer coming down the pike, how can your charity use this recession planning today? Use it to prove your transparency, your stability, your operational discipline to your current and future donors. Think about how this positions you not just for, short-term survival, but to actually capture that future stability, like legacy giving years from now. This kind of meticulous planning today, it really is an investment in your long-term future viability.